President Trump has essentially sowed the seeds of ISIS 2.0 in this decision.
I'd like to hear from him about how leaving the Kurds for slaughter, our allies for slaughter, where Russia then steps in to protect them, how that makes America great again.
This is the most screwed up decision I've seen since I've been in Congress.
Well, they don't mince their words, do they? And they are surrounding Trump. The media, the Democrats, the Europeans, and even Republican leaders are against him. What unites them all? He's abandoning the Kurds, they scream. But should we take that allegation at face value, or do they have their own agendas? Well, the Democrats and liberal media clearly want the president gone. The Europeans want America to continue leading the fight against Daesh. And Republicans, well, that's the real shocker, isn't it? Trump loyalists like Lindsey Graham, what exactly do they want?
We were supposed to be in Syria for 30 days. We've now been there for 10 years. We're policing. We're not fighting, we're policing. It's time to bring them home.
It's time to bring them home.
The U.S. military is on the way out of northeastern Syria tonight, and it appears Turkish forces are on the way in.
A colossal mistake at every possible level.
You don't have any regret for giving Erdogan the green light to invade?
I didn't give him a green light.
Well, did you tell him?
That's
Did he
the same
defy
thing
you?
as you just, when you make a statement like that, it's so deceptive. Just the opposite of a green light.
President Trump today faced condemnation from both Democrats and Republicans for essentially green lighting a Turkish assault on a key U.S. ally in the fight against terror, the Kurds.
They're not angels. They're not angels. If you take a look, you have to go back and take a look.
Green light to the Turks, renege on our handshake with the Kurds, and now we need to have a plan to deal with what happens with ISIS.
Cette offensive prend le risque d'aider Daesh à réémerger dans la région.
ISIS fighters escape and pose a threat elsewhere.
Well, they're going to be escaping to Europe. That's where they want to go. They want to go back to their homes, but Europe didn't want them.
He's not listening to his commanders. He's not listening to his advisors. He's making the biggest mistake of his presidency.
Lindsey Graham would like to stay in the Middle East for the next 1,000 years with thousands of soldiers and fighting other people's wars. The people of South Carolina want to see those troops come home, and I want an election based on that, and that's the way it is. Whether it's good or bad, that's the way it is.
Well, that is the way it is, but has he got it right or wrong? Let's discuss this now with our panel. Up there in the top left, we have Ali Dermidash. He's a Turkish political analyst working in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's state, by the way. We also have Will Orr, an Iraq War veteran who's worked at the State Department. And finally, Nick Lampson. Now, he has served 5 terms as a Democrat congressman for Texas. Welcome, all of you, to Nexus. Let me start with you, please, Ali. What do you think is behind this incredibly strong reaction we're seeing in the United States from pretty much everyone? Is it genuinely a concern, as they say, for the Kurds, in inverted commas, or is it that they're trying to bring down the U.S. president?
All of above, actually. I have been in the great country of the United States for more than 13 years. I have never seen Congress displaying such solidarity against an issue. The U.S. has a tremendous amount of problems. 30 million Americans are uninsured. Infrastructure is falling apart. The gun violence has killed more Americans than September 11th. None of these united the Congress, but Turkey's incursion in Syria. So it is very interesting.
And do the Congress and the media fail to distinguish between YPG and the Kurds generally?
Correct. The media particularly escalated the PKK as being representative of the entire Kurds. This is wrong on many levels. Turkey is fighting against the PKK, which is, as the State Department designated terror organization, But by escalating PKK as a representative of the entire Kurds, the media is trying to make it as if Trump is waging a war against the Kurds.
And Ali, if we were to look at the various different concerns and possible ulterior motives here, it's the most surprising to see Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell turning against Trump on this particular issue. You're in South Carolina, you're in his state. What might lie behind that?
Lindsey Graham is preparing for 2020, for re-election, and he is not doing really well in terms of the possibility of getting elected. So he is trying to look more, in quotes, presidential, quotes, more in charge of the issues. That's one reason why he is acting the way he is.
ISIS is going to reemerge. It will be on President Trump's watch. If he continues down this way of thinking, then Syria becomes his Iraq and then some.
Another reason is he has a big pro-Israeli constituent, and he is making the troop withdrawal, the Syrian troop withdrawal, he's making it an issue of the Israeli security.
Nick Lamson, as I said, you were a congressman, a Democrat congressman for Texas for 5 terms. When you view Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and others, do you believe that they should be taken at their word, or do they also have ulterior motives here?
Take them at their word. Obviously, there are motives to win elections, take control of the Congress for the Democrats, and to see to it that Trump does not get a second term. But I believe that this group of leaders in the House and in the Senate are taking very seriously the questions that have been raised about actions of President Trump. I don't like to air our dirty laundry in public, but we must call it as it is. And I think that it has been very appropriate for Nancy Pelosi to have done what she has done. She has resisted significantly the push for impeachment for a very long time. She went against a large part of her caucus as they were pushing to begin impeachment proceedings. So now that there has been specific action and moving forward, I think it's conscious, and I think that it will be interpreted as quite deliberate on their part.
Okay, well, let's just get a map up of Syria real quick, and you can see that when President Trump and President Erdogan discussed the operation on the phone on October the 6th, there was around 1,000 troops in the whole of Syria, concentrated mainly in the northeast of the country, and less than 50, he says, in this area where the Turks are conducting Operation Peace Spring. Well, after that phone call, Trump agreed to get those troops out of the way.
I don't want to leave troops there. It's very dangerous for, we had 28 troops as it turned out. People said 50, it was 28. And you had an army on both sides of those troops. Those troops would have been wiped out.
So we have there Trump making the point that leaving a handful of troops in the area would have just put them in harm's way between Turkey and the YPG. If I could ask you, Will, you're an Iraq War veteran and you were in the army for many years. Does what President Trump is saying make sense to you?
Absolutely, it makes sense to me. Risking 28 lives, American lives, makes no sense whatsoever. None. So, yes, it does make sense to pull the soldiers out of the harm's way.
And if they were there and anything happened to them, then this would possibly trigger an even greater participation by the United States.
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind it would definitely trigger something much larger.
Nick, do you see the merit in what President Trump is saying there?
Well, first of all, I'd really like to know if the numbers are accurate.
Right.
We don't know the numbers, and we have reason to not always trust what the president says, particularly as far as details are concerned. Clearly, we don't want to put people in harm's way. And the reason why we're in any place such as Syria or in that Kurdish area is to try to protect lives. To a certain extent, we have been policemen. Our friends, our allies have asked us to come in and be helpful to them. We can, we should be. And I think that as long as we can keep our focus on protecting people, protecting lives, and allowing them to live with the freedom and liberties that they deserve, it's what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, while Trump clearly did make way for Turkey's military operation, he's also insisted that he has successfully moderated the action on the ground. For example, with this letter to President Erdogan on the day the operation began. You don't want to be responsible for slaughtering thousands of people, and I don't want to be responsible for destroying the Turkish economy. And I will, he goes on to say, don't be a tough guy. But he also sent his Vice President, Mike Pence, and Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to Ankara to negotiate a pause in the fighting to give the YPG time to clear out of the area.
Thanks to the strong leadership of President Donald Trump and the strong relationship between President Erdogan and Turkey and the United States of America, that today the United States and Turkey have agreed to a ceasefire in Syria.
You would have lost millions and millions of lives. They couldn't get it without a little rough love, as I called it. I just put out. They needed a little bit of that at the beginning. So you have a 22-mile strip that for many, many years, Turkey, in all fairness, they've had a legitimate problem with it. They had terrorists, they had a lot of people in there that they couldn't have. They've suffered a lot of loss of lives also, and they had to have it cleaned out.
Well, in the face of enormous criticism from, well, pretty much everyone else, Trump still describes what he's doing as brilliant strategy. Let's go up to Ali Demirtas for a moment. What do you make, from the Turkish perspective, of how President Trump has acted over the last few weeks?
President Trump is under tremendous pressure at home, but at the same time, he wants to fulfill his campaign pledge of pulling the troops from abroad and ending endless wars in the Middle East. Because of that reason, he wants to cater both sides. He tweets against Turkey one day, and the next day he tweets for Turkey. So he wants to strike a balance between the two.
Nick?
There has to be a plan. There's inadequate planning for what happens. And for every action, there is a consequence. I believe that his inability to look beyond his immediate vision of doing an action of pulling the troops out is not followed through with. That's what we're missing at this point, and I think that's what we saw the reaction from Congress. They knew what was going to happen in the event that the troops were moved in the manner in which they ultimately were moved, and now we've seen the images of Erdogan and Putin together. We've seen the images of bombs and reports of people dying. So it's got to be.
On that issue, Nick, I want to ask you, what is wrong with Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan getting together and discussing the region? Is that somehow diminishing the United States' role?
It is diminishing the United States' role. We've had difficulty with Russia for as long as I can ever remember. And for us to seemingly play right straight into the hands of a nation that has tried to cause discord in the United States, clearly succeeded in causing discord in the United States, is a mistake.
Everybody is blaming President Erdogan for cozying up with Putin, but nobody is asking why he decided to do that. And the answer is very simple. The United States in particular and NATO in general failed to address Turkey's security concerns emanating from Syria. And it is only natural for Turkey, it is only natural for President Erdogan to seek help from Putin, who basically didn't oppose his request.
Well, as a veteran, what do you make of what Nick had to say there?
Well, based as a veteran and as a former soldier, basically we follow the orders of the Commander-in-Chief. The Commander-in-Chief is the President of the United States. Now, he's under advisement from members of Congress, House of Representatives, and all his other military advisors and civilian advisors supporting his decisions. In this particular case with Turkey, the amount of troops on the ground was not a viable force to be reckoned with to begin with. It was a token of appreciation, more or less, saying, hey, look, we're here to support you, we're here to help you, we're fighting ISIS, we're training your troops, but now enough's enough, let's get them out of here. You're on your own. We've sent millions and billions of dollars worth of arms to the YPG and supported their training. It's time for us to get out. From all the veterans organizations I've spoken to in the past, and currently speak to through other social platforms, they want the soldiers to come home. They want the troops to come home. 22 soldiers or veterans commit suicide on a daily basis in the United States. Now, this is something that Congress doesn't address.
And you know, Trump says it is his duty to put America first, and so once Daesh was defeated, in his words, there was no need to continue working with the YPG.
They were a good help, but we were a great help to them too. They were fighting ISIS. You know, they hated ISIS, so they were fighting ISIS. But we never agreed. Where is an agreement that said we have to stay in the Middle East for the rest of humanity, for the rest of civilization, to protect the Kurds? It never said that.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Ali? I mean, he's primarily known for being a businessman before he became a president, and he does look at it in those very business-like terms. You know, just take us through that.
He's a businessman more than the president of the United States. He's trying to solve America's problems through the lenses of a businessman. Therefore, he doesn't see any utility in being in Syria. There is really nothing for him that the United States should stay and be entangled with the problems of the country. Therefore, he wants to pull the troops and let the regional powers resolve the problems.
Well, when Trump says he wants to bring troops home from the Middle East, he's actually echoing what politicians in America have been saying for years. But as he's finding out, when push comes to shove, it's easier said than done. Over the years, there has been no shortage of US politicians who've said America should get out of the Middle East.
So we need to stop the endless wars. No great nation fights endless wars. We bring our people home, that is billions of dollars that we have to spend here at home on our people.
Uncle Sam cannot and should not do it all. We are not the policemen of the world.
We don't need another war. We need to find a way to work with allies and partners, and in some cases with our enemies.
And yet, Trump's intention to withdraw from Syria has met a wall of condemnation from the very same people.
I think it is an outrage. I think it is a disgrace.
They and others have accused the president of abandoning the Kurds and green-lighting Turkey's military operation in northern Syria. Trump's response? Let them work it out. He's talking about the Syrian regime, the Turks and the YPG, and it is in keeping with his message during the presidential campaign.
At some point we have to go out, right? I mean, we can't stay there forever. We have to rebuild this country. We have to rebuild our country.
For the president, America comes first, and the Middle East is best left to the people who live there. But his attempts to put that into practice have been frustrated so far. Not just in Syria, but also in Afghanistan, where negotiations with the Taliban failed, and he actually increased troops there. And as tensions with Iran increase, he's sending 3,000 troops to Saudi Arabia. But we saw 3 Democrat presidential candidates there saying basically it's time to end the wars in the Middle East, but when it comes to Trump, it does seem that they either disagree with him or they don't like the way he's gone about it. What do you think, Nick?
I think that's correct. It's a matter of vision and planning. All of us, or at least my friends, particularly are interested in the goodness of America. America has benefited greatly from our relationships around the world. We owe something back to those who have given to us. So I believe that our presence in places like Syria is important. The relationships that we can build, the friendships that we can keep, need to be honored. And I believe that if we make quick decisions, as happened in this case, and push other allies together at the expense of our own allies, is a mistake for us.
Will, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'd like to say it's not a matter of the Kurds here with Turkey going into Syria. It's a matter of the PKK. It's a matter of the YPG, not the Kurds. Okay, we're dealing with a terrorist organization. It's been recognized as a terrorist organization by the State Department and the United States and Turkey. Okay, this is not an attack on the Kurds. This is a buffer zone to repatriate the Syrian refugees that have hoarded into Europe because of the war with ISIS and the regime in Syria. So I think what Turkey is doing and what the United States should appreciate is the fact that, hey, okay, let's support this so we can get these people, these Syrian refugees, back home where they belong.
Matthew, the era in which the United States could single-handedly shape the Middle East has long gone. It took more than 500,000 American troops to shape Iraq. Keeping 200, 300 troops in Syria and trying to affect the Syrian policies is simply not feasible. Therefore, the United States needs local actors to shape the Middle East, and it is the best possible actor is Turkey.
Nick, you know, the United States has been in Afghanistan for, 18 years almost, and people want to know, when does it come to an end? When does it come to an end, Nick?
When we have done something effectively and made a difference. I don't think people across the United States of America, the average citizen, is impressed with what has happened since the decision to pull those troops out.
The thing is, Nick, of course, average citizens have to rely on the media to get their information, and as we're about to see, it's not always reliable. I mean, we've got, in the US media, they've been critical of the president, but some have gone well beyond that. A well-known journalist, American journalist, tweeted, "Children are being slaughtered. Those children were murdered by your God, King Trump, as sure as he dropped the bomb himself." And yet he posts with that a picture from an earthquake in Turkey in 1983, and he's now deleted those tweets. And then there was this report by ABC News just days after Turkey launched its operation. Have a look.
This video right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurd civilians in a Syrian border town.
This video, obtained by ABC News, appears to show the fury of the Turkish attack on the border town of Tal Abyad 2 nights ago.
Well, dramatic footage, certainly, but the thing is, it wasn't actually Syria, not even close. It's actually footage taken from a machine gun show in the state of Kentucky over 2 years ago. ABC later tweeted an apology, but not before running it again on Good Morning America. Well, the president spotted it, of course, and brought it up in an exchange with a reporter.
You should get your accounts correct, and you shouldn't be showing up buildings blowing up in Kentucky and say it's Syria, because that really is fake news.
Ali, do you think that the media in the United States is genuinely as outraged as they say, or is there some other ulterior motive at play here?
I don't think they are outraged for the Kurds. The liberal media in particular has been anti-Turkish. And the very fact that they are using fake images, fake footage from gun shows, it proves that what they are trying to do is not genuine. They want to make Trump, they want to make him look like as if his decisions have caused all this misery on the ground. The civilians are being slaughtered by the Turks. All these calamities are happening on the ground, and they are trying to put the blame on Trump by creating this fake imagery in the media.
Nick, do you believe that these were just genuine mistakes, or do you think it actually reveals something deeper and more biased about the media coverage?
I think there's both. I have written in my book, which is entitled The Death of Washington's Democracy, and I'd hope that somebody would read it, about what has happened to journalism in the United States of America. And it's pulling us apart. And you've seen the difficulty that we have faced as a nation. But there were people who have gotten into administrations over the last several decades that have affected the manner in which journalists operate in the United States. And we have created a news network that was anti-journalism. And it's done for political gain, unfortunately.
Will, just a final question for you. It's about the European approach to this. They seem to be very cross that the United States is withdrawing. They want the presence there to lead the fight and to pay for the fight against Daesh. They themselves have almost zero troops on the ground there. What do you make, as a former soldier yourself, of their approach?
It's quite typical on their behalf. Money speaks is the motivating factor here. It's also very political in Europe. There's I would say, a high anti-war climate within the population, and they don't like troops on the ground. The United States, on the other hand, in the last several years has been the police force of the world. So it's like, okay, well, Germany does not want to commit any troops. The UK doesn't want to commit any troops. None of these other countries want to commit any troops to any operation the United States is involved in. There is NATO. NATO's not involved. It costs money. The United States is flipping the bill there too. It's actually time for them to step up to the plate instead of the United States doing this one-sided. I mean, it's the U.S. taxpayers that are paying these bills.
Well, we have run out of time, but Will Orr, thank you very much for your analysis, and the same to you, Nick Lampson and Ali Dermadash. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Remember, you can see this and all our previous episodes on our YouTube channel. But for now, goodbye, and see you next week.